Trump is assembling his cabinet, and lo and behold, Project 2025 seems not to have been a figment of our imaginations. We'll talk through some of these picks and gauge just where we should put the freakout meter. We'll try to discern what is really going on with this Matt Gaetz nomination. We'll check in on Shadow POTUS, Elon Musk, and we'll try to figure out what's going on with the so-called Trump dance, including the hypocrisy behind celebrating it. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54. Usually this is the part where I throw to Ravi. Ravi is traveling today, so I am mercifully spared him crowing about the Bills beating the Chiefs. But I am joined by a guest co-host who I'm really excited about, my friend Paul Rieckhoff. Paul is a nationally recognized independent authority on politics, war, the military, and veterans affairs, a former high school football coach, investment banker, Army infantry officer, and 9/11 first responder. Rieckhoff founded Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America in 2004 and has been a respected fixture on the American media and political scene ever since. He's testified before Congress, battled with presidents, and led groundbreaking bipartisan efforts to reform the Department of Veterans Affairs, pass the new GI Bill, fight veteran suicide, and repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, while forging creative partnerships with Lady Gaga, NASCAR, and Netflix. He has his own podcast, Independent Americans, which I hope you'll check out. Paul, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. And I am in a house surrounded by Chiefs fans, which will definitely come up at some point in this conversation. Great to be with you, Jason. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yes, for the record, you live in New York. You have really no connection to Kansas City, but we are America's team now. I think we're just going on record saying that.
Well,
whether you like it or not.
You're America's NFL team. Yeah. I would argue that the undefeated Army cadets might be America's team right now, and they will wage battle against Notre Dame here in New York at Yankee Stadium on Saturday night, and it will be epic. And I hope everyone roots for America's team, Army.
I fully endorse that, obviously. Okay. Let's start with the biggest thing, I guess, going on in our politics right now, to my great dismay and probably yours, is that Trump gets to pick a cabinet because he won the election. I guess we'll go with the most recent announcement, and that is Dr. Oz is going to oversee Medicare. I guess before I say what my instinct is on this, you are genuinely independent. You are not a Democrat. You're not a Republican. So what is your honest opinion about this, or do you even have one? Are you sort of like, yeah, that's not that controversial?
Independent does not mean neutral. And I think like most Americans, I am outraged, shocked, and not quite flabbergasted by the cavalcade of ridiculousness that has become this cabinet. I was in a car last night, and my mother called, and she said, I have to talk to you. It's Dr. Oz. I can't believe Dr. Oz is going to be in charge of my Medicare. And I said, Mom, breathe. We're coming to see you for Thanksgiving. You're going to see the grandkids. It's going to be all right. And I think that, maybe we're going to use football a lot. Trump is flooding the zone. He's throwing everything at the other side. He's got what he views as a wounded quarterback, and he's just going to keep blitzing and keep throwing everything he can at the Democrats and at America. And he wants to continue to disorient people, and he's doing it by projecting and picking radical, extreme people. And as an independent, I think maybe that's what's most alarming and concerning for me. There's not a moderate among them. This is a group of religious, cultural, political extremists, really culture warriors. And I know we'll get into Pete Hegseth maybe as the most dangerous and glaring example. But Dr. Oz, at least he's not VA secretary, which we should talk about as well. And remember, Dr. Phil is still out there. So who knows what will happen by the time we get done with this conversation, man. But for everybody else, honestly, I think it's great that we have voices like yours, Jason. Stay frosty, everybody. Take a big, deep breath. Just like when the blitz is coming in your face and you're that quarterback in the pocket, you got to stay cool. You got to brace yourself for impact. But you also got to remember that there's 4 quarters in this game, and you got to have some energy and some resilience and some durability. And maybe most of all, it's hard to keep a cool head, as you know, Jason, when the rounds are flying. But that's when cool heads are required the most, and when we got to stick together and come back in the huddle and look out for each other.
It's a great point, because it feels like, between 2016 and 2020, the quote unquote resistance method was basically to highlight the abnormality of every action that Trump took and to make sure everybody understood none of this is okay. And now it's sort of like, it feels like on the left, at least, that is the muscle memory that is left over, is to, oh my God, Dr. Oz. And then when you step back from it, you're like, was this really that surprising? I mean, of all the picks, the guy, if you were to put it in a Democratic context, if you pretend, for me, like if I pretend he comes from my side of the aisle, okay, he's a guy who ran a very close race for the US Senate and lost, and then wound up in a high profile position. Well, what does that sound like? Oh, that sounds like when I was offered VA or Secretary of the Army by Biden, and I was like, I don't want to move, I want to stay in Kansas City. I would not have been like, oh my God, what are you doing picking a guy who lost a close Senate race? And I mean, so if we step back from it and we try and put ourselves in their shoes, it doesn't mean that he's an acceptable person to run Medicare. I mean, given that he has extreme views on the issues. But if you look at it from their point of view, from their end of the telescope, I think that's important this time around. That if we freak out each time they do something that they think is normal, we are going to look out of touch to people who voted for them but are gettable by us.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I think you also have to recognize that when President Obama chose a secretary for the Defense Department, he picked a Republican in Bob Gaetz.
Yeah.
When he picked a VA secretary, he picked Bob McDonnell, a Republican, right? So he made an effort to try to bring people together, to try to create a cabinet that was diverse and that could lead effectively all Americans. And I think that as an independent, again, what is most alarming to me is that you've got a established high profile group of effective culture warriors and propagandists. They are very effective. And that's the part that you can't dismiss. If you look at somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, if you look at somebody like Pete Hegseth, if you look at somebody like Linda McMahon, they are good at the game. Right? They are good at video. They are good at audio. They are good at sound bites. They're good at events. They can show up at a UFC event, and then they can go in Congress and throw bombs. So you have to kind of respect the game on some level, even if you don't respect the way they play it. And I think for me, what I continue to ask people is you got to come up with new strategies. And frankly, you can't hold your breath on the Democrats alone to hold the line. That's why I think 51% of the country is independent now, because they're losing faith in both parties and they're looking for alternative options. So I hate to say it, but this is a time when we're going to need Mitt Romney and Olympia Snowe and Lisa Murkowski and Republicans to break ranks and block some of these nominees. And what I've been telling people a lot, Jason, is it's not normal, it's not acceptable, but it's also not inevitable. This does not have to happen. Pete Hegseth does not have to be the VA secretary. Dr. Oz does not have to be confirmed. There is a strategic response that can stop or even slow down some of these picks and maybe run the clock out, right? Minimize the damage that somebody like Pete Hegseth can do at the Pentagon if he's confirmed 6 months later instead of in a recess appointment.
Well, okay, let me ask you a two-part question. One, and you take it in any order you want. Talk about what you see as a strategy that's like that, for lack of a better term, a resistance strategy, but also because I think, look, our audience is partisan. Our audience, you're not exactly not used to talking to people who are one or the other, but I'm sure if they're meeting you for the first time, they're curious why you've decided to remain an independent. So talk about that a little bit, because I think it's important, but also talk about sort of how you see, because you've done that a lot. You've waged battles in Congress without being in Congress, and you've done it successfully.
Yeah, and I've been on MSNBC for 20 years, right? So sometimes I'm, maybe by default, the closest thing to a conservative on MSNBC. I'm going to go do Nicole Wallace's show after this, as I do almost every Wednesday. I think the key for me is that it's a different way of looking at politics. And it's basically where 60% or more of young people are, where they reject the existing structures. They reject the existing solutions, right, or lack thereof. And whether it's a rejection of traditional organizations like churches or local community groups, or it's a rejection of malls and they want to go on Amazon. I mean, there is now a time where the consumer can control their allegiances. And what I just recommend people consider is, when we were in the military, you kept your party in your back pocket, right? Even if you had one. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people didn't have a party. They were unaffiliated. They were nonpartisan. And I think this is a time where many people feel like their allegiance is to the country and not to a party. I know there are exceptions, and some people are going to be diehard partisans, but you can still vote for Democrats and be an independent. You can make them come to you, and you don't have to give them your money, your family name, your Twitter profile, and your blind allegiance. And I think especially now, a lot more Democrats are feeling that. They feel like the party has failed them. And for me, I'm not holding out hope right now, especially for the Republican Party to save America or the Democratic Party to save America. So what's the future look like? It could look like Dan Osborne, who ran for Senate in Nebraska. He ran against a Republican, and he almost won. He was a steam fitter, a union guy. He made $48,000 last year working in a factory, and he represents kind of an angry middle or an angry moderate part of the country that feels extremely underrepresented. And I think Trump has hijacked a lot of that. He's become a vessel for their grievance. He's played the culture politics in a reverse way. And he masters a lot of the culture, whether it's Joe Rogan or UFC or the NFL. He's beating Democrats to the spot in a lot of kind of traditionally American places where you can control and drive the culture. So for me, the future is going to be independent. Now, there's always going to be red and blue places where that's not the case. But I think more and more people are looking for options. And for me, that's where I sit. I want them to come to me, and I'm not going to give them my family name or my allegiance. George Washington was an independent and warned us against the dangers of the parties. And I think a lot could be said about how the parties have gotten us into the situation we're in right now. So America is not a party. I mean, and the solution to two parties, in my view, is not a third party. It's no party at all. It's none of the above. Put country first and make them come to you, be a free agent, and demand better.
I think your point about that's where a lot of America is right on. And I think also it's important for Democrats and independents to recognize that not just Trump, but that the Republicans operating at the top of their party are beating us to those cultural spots. And a lot of it it's not for any reason other than America, given technology, given the fact that this is the longest consecutive period we've ever gone without some form of mandatory service, we have so few things we share as Americans.
Yeah.
And so when you can find your way into those spaces, you're talking to the most people. And people think of 2016 as when our politics got Trumpified, but I don't really think that that's accurate. I think it was like the culmination of our politics and our popular culture merging. And it feels like it started, before that. And it actually kind of started with Obama. I mean, that's why, they ineffectively attacked him as a celebrity, because what they were going after was the fact that his campaign, his movement had merged with popular culture in the country. And so now it's sort of like whoever can occupy that popular culture space, that ends up being a marker for who is in touch. And there's nothing more valuable in American politics or any politics than seeming in touch, because it's synonymous with listening.
Yeah. And I've got a lot of friends who are Democrats and Republicans. I've advocated and voted for a lot of Democrats and some Republicans. John Tester is a friend and ally in Montana. I think John Tester is an example of a guy who is incredibly effective. I said, I don't care what party John Tester runs for. He's had my back as a veteran. He's been a strong leader. I think he's a man of character. He's a cool guy to hang out with. We talk shit about basketball, but he's a real human being. And he's also been on my show before. And I told him a year and a half ago, I said, you might be better off running as an independent. And I think what we've seen is, whether you like it or not, the Democratic brand can drag people down, especially in places like Montana, especially in places like Nebraska. So the question has got to be, what's your goal? Is your goal defending and preserving democracy, or is your goal making sure that your team wins, right? Mm-hmm. And I think if you separate those two and say, for example, in Nebraska, a Democrat's not going to win. Bob Kerrey will tell you that. Chuck Hagel will tell you that. And that's why Bob Kerrey, the Democrat, endorsed Dan Osborne, because he felt like Dan could win. And I think that's what you have to do as an American, is look across the board and say, for example, if you've got a radical MAGA extremist candidate or an incumbent like Deb Fischer, who voted against veterans benefits and who's been, in my view, a terrible leader for Nebraska, how are you going to beat her? Right. And you're not going to beat her with a Democrat like you've tried before, but maybe you can beat her with an independent. And if you do, that would have been one senator knocked out from the right. And that's why so many Democrats and liberals poured into that race and tried to support Dan Osborne, because they were focused on, most of all, the goal. Right. Pilots say it all the time. Focus on the target first. And I think this is a time for everybody, regardless of your party affiliation, to focus on the target. And for me right now, the target is defending democracy from extremists, from insurrection, from all these very immediate threats that, in my view, are existential and are going to come to a head in the next year, especially.
Well, to that point, let's go to this clip of you actually the other day on CNN with a guy I used to spar with on CNN occasionally, Scott Jennings, talking about these mass deportation plans.
I need a drink for this. Yeah. In small numbers.
To the
this is a very different thing.
Many state.
You can't deploy them to.
You got to make your speech.
Is it a debate with you, or am I answering questions with the host? Because every time I come on, you want to sidetrack and take me into your talking points.
But by all means,
no.
Have at it, my friend. You're the expert. Have at it.
No, I'm no expert. I'm just a concerned
you
American.
act like one. Have we or have we not?
Have you served in uniform?
I have served as a United States citizen and have read the
but
newspaper.
I think in this case, I might have a bit of experience that you don't. I'm no expert.
Have you been to the border?
I have not been to the border.
Oh, so
I also haven't been deployed to the border.
Go ahead, by all means.
Regular military. Is there something?
Before I even ask you a question about this, what it reminds me of is and look, of all the guys that the right tends to put up over the years on CNN, Scott is one of the most tolerable. I think we can agree.
Tolerable?
One of the most among the. You remember who they used to put on?
I don't agree with that.
Well, see, now I was a CNN commentator back when they had like that guy.
Forum? I don't know what.
Yeah, like the guy, like the guys who they would put on because
it's a low bar, man.
Yeah, but do you remember what they used to do? Like what they used to do is they used to have those guys come on, they'd say crazy stuff, and then they'd spend the rest of the day reporting on the crazy stuff that the people they pay to say crazy stuff said. And Scott survived all that. So I guess tolerable, he's the least intolerable of the intolerables. Anyway, where I'm going with this is it reminds me of that part in Ghostbusters where Zeddemore says to whatever Aykroyd's character was, he says, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. When somebody asks you, did you serve in uniform? And if you didn't, you just say no. You don't actually have to say anything else because then you end up where Scott was. But that's, okay. But what y'all were talking about was the mass deportation plans. And clearly they want to act like this is an easy button you can push. That and that easy button is we'll just use the military because they want to pretend that the military is this super precise instrument that has functions for everything.
Yeah.
But that is, as you and I know, now it is it is the most professional organization probably in the history of planet Earth, particularly at this point. But it is not a precise instrument when dealing with their own citizens. Now you go.
So let's start with what you saw, right? Here's what I want to tell people. He's a dick. He's a real dick. He's rude. He's kind of sneaky. Like when you come, I come into this show every once in a while, and I know what I'm in for, right? It flashes me back to
this is what I love about you, Paul. It's like you're like, hey man, I'm here to defend democracy, not make fucking friends.
Look. I mean, I did this on Hardball in 2004 with Pete Hegseth, right? Like I've been down this road before and I've seen this type of environment that I've said out loud. I've told Abby Phillips, I think this kind of shit is bad for America. I think the viewers don't actually like it. I think I feel dirty and stupid when I leave that show and I'm on it, right? And the media is what I've called the giant self-licking ice cream cone. They want the clip so that the clip goes viral. So then you go back and watch to see what they might say next, right? But they're all mobbed up. I mean, we could talk about Scarborough and Brzezinski and all that. And I know because I've been inside it for 20 years, not getting paid, right? Like you were paid here at CNN. I am technically the lowest paid person at MSNBC. And I also go to News Nation every week, which is conservative, right of center. I go to CNN, I go to Fox. I've seen it all. So I want people to understand something that's really important. A lot of it's a game. Like I walked into the makeup room. I said, "Hey, Scott." He doesn't talk to me. When I go sit down at the table, they're all down on their phones, like ready for battle. Yes. And I sit down at the table. I'm like, "Hey, good evening, everybody." Like, hey. And I'm like, "All right, this is what it's going to be." Scott's the kind of guy who won't say anything to your face and waits for you to turn your head and gives you a sucker punch, right? Mm-hmm. It's not honorable, right? And I'm not shitting you when I tell you I'm not there to fuck with this guy. I'm there to talk with the host, right? And to have a conversation. Maybe one area I did screw up, I am an expert, right? Like I've taught political science. I've done veterans and military policy for 20 years. So definitely at that table, I'm by default an expert.
Dude, you're a combat veteran and you're talking about deploying the military to do
that alone doesn't make me an expert, right?
It does at that table.
And it does at that table, right? And I'm very careful to pull that card. But in that case, he's doing something that's strategic. He's running the clock out. he's filibustering. He's trying to change the conversation. He knows I'm uniquely effective, right? And the best thing he can do is try to just disorient me. It's all the same strategy, right?
Well, Paul, before you finish,
Yeah.
let me throw in one other element that people
Yeah.
who have not done that don't know, which is that there's this unspoken thing when you do a panel like that that's like playing time. It's like Little League playing time. And there's this unspoken pressure in the room that the idea is that you're supposed to talk, but only long enough so that everybody around the table gets equal time to talk. Otherwise, you're like not a good team player. And when you're not doing, like when he's saying, wait a minute, you made your little speech, the audience hears one thing, but what you in the room know is he's saying, hey man, you got your TV time, and that's the disconnect. You're not there for TV time.
Grabbing the mic and he's shoving me out of the way. Like my little speech, that's what I'm fucking there to do.
Right.
I'm here to answer the question and provide analysis from an informed standpoint. And he's there to be a partisan propagandist and try to chop me down, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like I can run through the ball field and stiff arm to the left. And sometimes I'll battle with folks on the left as well. But I do try to keep a true north. And there's an insight here that I think is most important. Scott represents something very, very important right now that everybody should be alarmed by. And you know these people. They're a next generation of chicken hawks. They're people, he's 2 years younger than me. Never served in the military, never picked up a weapon, didn't do shit after 9/11, right? Sat behind a desk. He's a desk jockey. He's the same kind of guy who said we should go to Iraq and bring democracy. And now he or anybody else who says that anything the military does will be simple, anyone who tries to tell you you should put sons and daughters in harm's way, I don't care if they're Republican, Democrat, or independent, you should be skeptical because there is nothing that is not dangerous that the military does. And the examples could go from Kent State to Rodney King to Japanese internment camps. If you put men and women in uniform in harm's way, some of them are going to get hurt and some of them might die, right? They might fall off a truck. There's any number of things.
And they might kill somebody.
And they might kill somebody
because like
I'm also actually by default an expert because I was trained as an MP. So what do? We do crowd control, we do checkpoints, we do jails, right? We do those things. And I know, as you do, Jason, how wrought with challenge that is. And just the idea that you can frivolously offer to throw somebody else's kids in the middle of the most radioactive issue on the planet. One of the panelists said, if they come for the kids, I'm going to protest. So, okay, National Guardsman, 19 years old, maybe you're an artillery guy. Your job is to do what? To move that woman to go into that church or just drive a truck, whatever it is. The mission needs to be clear. It needs to be achievable and it needs to be supported. And this is maybe harkens back to Iraq too, Jason. Once he decides to do it, half the country won't support it. So when is it a good idea to do any military mission that starts with half the country not supporting?
That is a great point, right? Because you're right. That is the lesson that we've learned is that
it's going to make Iraq look popular. I mean,
yeah, it's how you end up with. I mean,
quagmire.
It's such a great point.
Quagmire is how you end up with people hurt. It's how you end up weakening your military. It's how you also end up damaging the credibility of the military. Because what's the old saying? If every problem looks like a nail, all you think you have is a hammer, right?
Yes.
Right. And everybody thinks that the military is the solution to everything. There's no military solution to this. There have been plenty of people like General John Kelly was deployed to the Rodney King riots, I think as a major. Like imagine being thrust into the Rodney King riots, right? Yeah. Who wants that job? Nobody. Right. So I think this is a time for everybody to be very vigilant in demanding accountability and clarity of mission. What is their mission? Is it achievable? And does it have support? Right. Because Ross Perot once said he was going to put a monument outside the Pentagon or outside the White House that said, first commit the country, then commit the military. And we don't have the country.
Boy, I'd never heard that. That is a great motto. All right, we're gonna. This is already so much fun. We're gonna have a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about Matt Gaetz and JD Vance, and all sorts of faux masculine awkwardness. All right, we'll be right back.
Forget everything you know about fasting. Prolon by L Nutra is the only patented fasting mimicking diet that combines the benefits of prolonged fasting with a science-backed nutrition plan so that you can hit your health and weight loss goals without actually having to give up all the food. Introducing Prolon, a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. Researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California Longevity Institute and backed by leading U.S. medical centers, Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, support cardiovascular health, and reduce abdominal fat. But Prolon isn't a diet. Prolon is science. Science based on Nobel Prize winning discoveries in medicine, and this all starts with Prolon's 5-day program, snacks, soups, beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state, and it's unlike anything you've ever experienced. I did the 5-day program, and I feel so much better. Prolon really isn't like any other diet I've tried because it's not a diet. It's truly science. And it was so convenient. They sent me everything I needed all in one box. It was amazing. And it's no wonder why thousands of doctors now recommend Prolon to support healthy blood sugar and cardiovascular health. Right now, Prolon is offering Majority 54 listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. Go to prolonlife.com/majority54. That's Prolon, PROLON, life.com/majority54 for the special offer. That's prolonlife.com/majority54. This episode is sponsored by Rhone. If you're like me, you understand the pains of finding what to wear. Most clothes are uncomfortable. They may be too tight. They never, actually fit your size because, a lot of us are not exactly small, medium, large, extra large. We're complicated. Sometimes when you find something you like, you can only wear it for a few hours before that important meeting or dinner, and then you have to change into something else. And everyone wants to dress their best. You want to look good at all times. And frankly, it's a confidence booster. So here's the deal. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man, and here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone commuter collection. And here's some anecdote. I'm wearing my Rhone pants right now. And last week I was at a wedding. I wore my Rhone button-down shirt to the wedding at a formal wedding, and I will also wear it tomorrow when I just go into a coffee shop to have a meeting. It's that versatile. So it's time to feel confident without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. Yeah, I actually not so neatly folded that shirt in my bag for the wedding, and I was able to take it out, and automatically I was able to put it on. It looked like I had ironed it, but I didn't. It's an inside secret between us. So with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll also be smelling fresh and clean all day. On top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can dish the dry cleaner all together. We're on the move a lot, and the Rhone commuter collection has never let me down. The versatility and overall comfort of the collection is undefeated. I absolutely love it. And even after I wear it all day, I feel super fresh because that Gold Fusion anti-odor technology. At that wedding, I was dancing up a storm, wore it, no problems. So the commuter collection can get you through any work day and straight into whatever comes next. So head to Rhone.com/majority and use the promo code majority to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/majority and use the code majority. It's time to find your corner office comfort. No one wants to lose his hair, but for men, it's actually very common. And now with Hims, the solution is simple. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who got their flow back. Hims provides you with convenient and quality access to a range of hair loss treatments that all work, all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized, chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there's no uncomfortable doctor visits. Answer a few questions, and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. And if prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And Hims has hundreds of thousands of treated subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/majority. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
Okay, we're back. Paul, I want to.
I like Roan, by the way. Roan pants, super comfortable. Yeah. Not a sponsor on my show. Hims, I might need the hair loss stuff. But I also want to interrupt this program and tell you, best football team in New York is not the Bills. It's Army, bro. It's Army. Yeah. Ranked top 20. People don't realize it's the best Army football team maybe in a generation. But in your knocks on the Bills, I think the Bills are pretty damn awesome, by the way.
They are. I'm not knocking them. I'm scared of them.
But the best football team in New York is Army.
You're not a West Pointer, though, right?
No, but I grew up near West Point, and we don't have much football around here. So that's who we root for. And how can you not root for Army in sports when they're like badly overmatched and outgunned, right?
And not going to the NFL, but instead going into the Army.
Yeah.
I'm with you. No, I do. I have the merch and everything. All right. Now, as I introduced this idea of talking about Vance and Gaetz and all that, it reminds me of when I first got elected Secretary of State. I had somebody who had been, it was the Democratic governor at the time, Jay Nixon, was giving me advice on like hiring out my top staff. And he told me this anecdote. He said that when he got elected governor, he was asking other governors, as I put together my state level cabinet, what should I prioritize? Qualifications or loyalty? And he said he went around the room and people gave different answers. Everybody was like, well, they got to be qualified. And I remember he said when it got to Jennifer Granholm, she said, well, the most important thing is that they're qualified as long as they're loyal. and that always stuck with me. And now I think clearly Trump is taking this to its extreme, right? To the point of where really the qualification is not even a consideration, right? We don't need to spend a ton of time on that. But what it leads me to is I think about these two people who I read this morning are walking around the U.S. Senate together this week, and that is J.D. Vance and Matt Gaetz. And so J.D. Vance is having to walk Matt Gaetz around and try and convince Republican senators to vote for his confirmation as Attorney General. And it got me thinking about the nature of political loyalty and what it requires you to do in terms of separating yourself from whatever version of character you once had, if you still have any shred of it. And so when I think about J.D. Vance, I think about a guy who, not that long ago, like a decade and a half ago, was spending his time around Marines. He was spending his time around people who, acted by a certain code of conduct, at least professionally, and did what they said they were going to do. That's the biggest thing to me is like, whatever you may think about how a Marine or a soldier may act in their off-duty hours, because we have the old trope about being great in the field, bad in garrison. That's all real. But if they say, I secured that room, if they say, I did this thing you told me to do, they did it. And so when I think about the journey that J.D. Vance has had to go on in his life in order to hook his star to a guy like Donald Trump, who he is, infamously talked about in the past negatively, and then to go around and be like, this guy, Matt Gaetz, who it is increasingly proven, almost beyond alleged, almost at this point, that, he paid for sex from underage girls. This stuff is all leaking out. I just am curious, like, your thoughts about what the hell to think about all this. Like, literally, like, about the journey of character or lack thereof that Vance has had to go on to do this.
I'm always excited to hear where the question is going to end, right?
Yeah. I didn't really know until.
I knew. I was waiting for it. And it's a good one. Maybe going back to where you started. Should it be, qualifications or loyalty, right? I actually am going to say it should be something else. It should be integrity. It should be integrity. It should be respect. Is this person a person of integrity? Is this person someone who is respected? Who is honorable, who is going to be respected by their allies, their enemies, the people that they lead. And I think that's really what this should be a moment for all Americans to think. How do you make sense of this, right? I spoke to a group of leaders here in New York City last night, a group of Jewish leaders, men who were trying to figure out, what do they do to respond to this moment with so many things happening and the rise in anti-Semitism. And I said, look, like, we need leaders to step up and be honorable. And that means in your community, it means in your synagogue, in your church, it means if you're coaching football, or if it means just like when you're out with your kids at the playground. Don't be a dick. Don't be an asshole. Don't be rude. Be respectful, be honorable, be courteous, be nice, right? Like, be someone that your kids want to look up to. And I think that is important in politics, and we shouldn't accept less than that, especially in a role like Secretary of Defense, where you are going to be responsible for 2.7 million people. You're going to be their leader. You're their CEO. And what I want to ask people is, if you're okay with Matt Gaetz, you're okay with Pete Hegseth, would you be okay with him as the principal of your school? Right? Because why should our troops or the people in our Justice Department take less than what you would expect for your kindergarten? I got a kindergartner and I got a third grader. And if these guys were fucking principal, we would be out of there. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the cascading effects of these people that maybe the political chatosphere is not really taking into account. If you put Pete Hegseth in charge of the Pentagon, he is going to drive out women. He's going to drive out people of color. He's going to drive out people who aren't Christian. He's going to drive out people who don't want to deal with drama, right? Any number of people. And I think the question we should be asking is not, are they qualified, but are they disqualified, right? Mm-hmm. Is this disqualifying? If you paid off a woman for an alleged sexual assault, that should be disqualifying, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're going to lead an organization at the Pentagon that has a military sexual assault problem, and you're backing it up with a policy that says you want to remove women from combat while they're actively engaged in combat. So in order to execute that policy, as you know, Jason, you'd have to actively remove people from combat roles right now, as they had to do with the trans ban, right? There's a practical application that makes this extremely disruptive and compromises not just morale and recruiting, but readiness, right? And so I think that's the issue with all of these candidates. We have to ask for better. None of them are inevitable. I do not think all Republicans are crazy or unethical or don't care about morals. And I think this is a time for leaders to rise. They may be unlikely, but also, again, we need more than just political leaders. We need moral leaders. We need spiritual leaders, especially people who resonate. And this is what Trump got right. Like, Trump was smart, right? He had Dana White. He knows Dana White's got the Church of UFC, and they buy everything he sells. He knows he got Joe Rogan, has a Church of Joe Rogan, right? There have to be offsetting churches or communities of influence. And Oprah's maybe a good example, right? But you need more of those, especially from outside of politics, that can push back and say, hey, America, are we really okay with these people being our public face to the world? They wouldn't be qualified to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Why should they be in charge of the Defense Department, which is the second largest employer in the world, right? So how do you feel about Pete Hegseth being your daughter's boss? Are you really with that, right?
Speaking of which, you have personal experience with Pete Hegseth. You referenced it earlier. You all were, in a way, I don't want to say parallel paths, because yours was much more of a nonpartisan and policy-oriented path, and his was a more of a political and cultural warrior path. But it was like you were like, for lack of a better way of putting it, in the same locker room getting ready to go out for the game, right? In the last like decade and a half. So talk about that. Talk about your experience with him a little bit.
So I know Pete Hegseth, right? I mean, we met, I don't know when it was, like 2009. I was running Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans America. He was running then a group called Vets for Freedom. That at that time.
And actually, let me provide even more context for the audience.
Yeah, please.
You came back from Iraq.
2004.
You came back in 2004. I went over to Afghanistan 2006. And what I remember was when I was going over, you had come home, you were on TV. And one of the main thrusts of IAVA at the beginning was, we don't have proper equipment. I mean, it was you basically saying, hey, Donald Rumsfeld, people are getting killed because you're not sending us in with up armor. You're not sending us in with armor. So that's what you're out there doing in the public sphere versus what Hegseth was doing. Now go ahead.
I mean, the organization was originally called Operation Truth. Yes. Because we felt like the truth of the troops was not being represented to America. And on a very basic level, we didn't have body armor. First time I ever went on Fox News was to argue with Sean Hannity. And Sean Hannity told me I was lying. It was bullshit. I was a partisan. I was John Murtha. But now we know we didn't have body armor, right? We didn't have basic equipment that would prepare us. So we came home as advocates, right, on issues. There was a point where, I could have become a partisan, right? And there are folks, many folks that did. I mean, I've known Tammy Duckworth a long time. I've known Patrick Murphy a long time. I've known John Schultz a long time, right? Plenty of people, you and others. And I did not choose a side. If I did, yeah, maybe I could have been like a comp to him at MSNBC or somewhere else. Some people want to say I am, and I think that's an unfair categorization. I think we all knew Pete because he was in the space, right? And at that time, Vets for Freedom, I think, was pushing for staying in Iraq, right? I think that was their push. And then it evolved, and he became leader of a group called Concerned Veterans of America that wanted to privatize the VA, right? That was funded by the Koch brothers. So then the transition began, and Pete became more radicalized or more to the right. He went on Fox News. I actually took Pete to CAA once to help him try to get an agent because my wife worked there. I took J.R. Martinez, my good friend, who folks may remember won Dancing with the Stars, and Pete Hegseth. I was like, these guys are going to be stars. Anybody want to rep them? And there was interest in JR. There was not a lot of interest in Pete because he was right of center. But I knew Pete was going to be a star. He's very good at the game. He's very good at the Fox thing, right? So now to see this full evolution, I think the most important thing for people to understand is Pete's very effective. He is beloved in that community. And there's a lot of blind spots on the left about what that community is like. When we're talking about Joe Rogan and I'm on TV, I realize a lot of the people on the panels with me have never listened to Joe Rogan.
That's right.
I've been listening to Joe Rogan forever, right? Like I know about Joe Rogan, and they don't understand he's been calling UFC for 25 years, right? He's a part of the culture. And I think that blind spot allows them to dismiss someone like Hegseth, who is like, for them, the next generation of Bill O'Reilly, right? He's even better because he's a vet. And you've got Bongino and him and others that are kind of typecast. And maybe that's what I'd flag about all these nominees is Trump is very smart in casting. And he's casting a lot of vets. It's Tulsi Gabbard. It's so many others. EPA, Lee Zeldin is another veteran. He says that he's qualified to run the EPA because he was in the Army Reserves and he can deal with bureaucracy. Well, shit, that means there's probably, a million Army Reservists who are qualified to run the EPA. Yeah. But he knows that it works. And he knows that veterans are powerful politically. They're good communicators. They can do what I did to Scott on Fox, on CNN and say, hey, you didn't serve and I did. And I think we should all be wary of that because Pete Hegseth has been a long time in the making, but we never thought he would reach this far and make him SecDef. We thought he might be VA secretary. I said for a long time, Pete would probably be a press secretary or chief of staff because he wouldn't have to be vetted because a lot of this stuff has been out there. And I was like, there's no way he's going to make it through fucking vetting. But in this Senate, he might. So I think what I'd end with is saying, integrity should be the barrier, the barometer. It should be the thing we require of every leader in the same way you have to have integrity to raise your right hand and take the oath. And we should never reduce that or lower it because of any reason. Even if they're putting up 25 of them, they can all be fucking disqualified if they don't have any integrity or honor. And that's what I'm hoping America will rise to the moment and push for.
And part of that is intellectual integrity. And that intellectual integrity is not having the blind spot of saying, oh, because I don't like what this guy stands for, he must be an idiot. And he must not be. And that's the argument you're making. That's an important one is if you fail to properly assess your adversary, they will beat you.
He's like a WWE character. Like, I mean, he literally cooked up in a lab. He's got the jaw. He's got the tattoos. I've been following him on social media like you have for a long time. I mean, I think the best alternative that the Democrats have is Wes Moore. I love Wes. He's a longtime friend.
Or Ruben Gallego.
I think Wes is on another level. Like Ruben's not putting on pads and practicing with the Baltimore Ravens.
Wes is doing some special stuff.
It's like, I love Wes. Wes's Instagram, I've said, is like Wes porn. It's like Wes with puppies. It's Wes throwing footballs with Lamar Jackson. It's
Wes, you're right.
But Wes is getting the culture, right? And I don't think the Democrats have too many people, if anyone, that I can think of like Wes. Wes should be at more UFC games. Wes is at every football game. Wes understands how to talk to firefighters and talk to union people and also talk to CEOs. He is maybe the most talented and effective multi-sport political athlete I've ever seen.
And anybody who hasn't read The Other Wes Moore should read it.
Yeah. But I think you need more Wes Moores. You need more Wes Moores. And you are an example of that too. You're effective as a multi-sport athlete and any party, and I would argue no party. This is what we're trying to do at Independent Veterans of America. We're trying to get men and women who can be multi-sport athletes and can be respected as leaders, people who people will vote for regardless of their party affiliation.
All right. On the subject of the utmost integrity, we're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and talk about Elon Musk.
Great.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude, and I'm so grateful for my family. And along with my family, there's another person that we don't get to thank enough, which is ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/M54 today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/M54. You all know how important sleep is to me. That's why I'm obsessed with my Helix mattress. With everything that's going on in life, from work to a demanding social schedule to sports and kids, it's incredibly important to me that I'm getting a good night of sleep every night. My wife can attest, we've had our Helix mattress for over 2 years now, and our sleep quality has improved tremendously. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. So how will you know which Helix mattress works best for you and your body? Take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes. And your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door, free of charge. I took the Helix Sleep Quiz, and I was matched with a Midnight Luxe mattress because I sleep on my side and I wanted something that was medium firm. The Midnight Luxe is a huge upgrade from the mattress I had a couple of years ago because, like, if I'm tossing and turning, which I tend to do, it doesn't wake up Diana. It's amazing. Helix knows that there's no better way to test out a new mattress than by sleeping on it in your own home. That's why they offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Helix has also been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 25% off site-wide, plus 2 free dream pillows with any mattress purchase. Go to helixsleep.com/majority. That's helixsleep.com/majority. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It can also track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/majority to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/majority for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. All right. It would appear that Elon, you're back. It would appear that.
By the way, this is not set up. I got a Helix mattress and it's great. Like, you got some really good sponsors, and Helix, give me a holler because I love that bed. It's really freaking comfortable. Also, while we were on break, Navy released their Army Navy uniforms. And
okay.
They suck. They
yeah,
suck.
well, I mean,
they're whited out. They don't look as cool. The Army has Battle of the Bulge uniform.
Yeah, they have the all black, the blacked out.
If you're a sports fan, the Army Navy uniform reveals are like off the charts and will give you hope. And Jason, if I can, one thing, I know a lot of folks are feeling beat up and down right now, and a lot of folks have been saying, "Hey, where's the hope?" Hope is the oxygen of democracy. And I want to go back to our last segment and say something. Watch Wes Moore, because Wes Moore is contagious in his hope. and energy, and especially if you're a Democrat, and I'm not a Democrat, I'm going to root for Wes no matter what party he runs for, because he's my friend and I love him and I think he's an incredible leader. But if you're looking for like, who do I look to give me some inspiration and some hope for the future? Wes Moore. He also may be the front runner to challenge Donald Trump or whoever in 4 years. So I'd be looking to Wes Moore if you need a dose of some positivity and inspiration, especially if you're a Democrat.
I fully endorse that. Totally. Both the point about the Army-Navy game and more than anything about Wes Moore. Totally agree. Okay. Let's talk about somebody who's completely on the other side of the morality spectrum, it would appear, and that is Elon Musk. I guess what I'm interested in is he made, I think, a business decision. I don't know how many months ago, right? I mean, he was already, because a lot of people drift far right when they feel like they're starting to get canceled. They say, oh, well, that's a refuge for me. I can go there. We've seen Russell Brand do it. We've seen that sort of thing. So he was already heading in that direction. But as a business person, Musk was thinking, yeah, but it's in my interest to not get too deep into this fray. And at some point, he made the decision to go long on Trumpism. And it certainly appears to be paying off right now.
Yes. I mean, I think, and this is an interesting related point. You know where Elon Musk was last year on December 6th? The Army-Navy game.
Yeah.
He came to the Army-Navy game. And that's another example of the culture, right? Trump will probably be at the Army-Navy game. It's a nationally broadcast game on CBS when there's no other game on that weekend. It's wrapped in America. It's like an NFL game on steroids. There's so much America, right? But Elon was there, and Elon was visible there, and he got a good reception. And I think, I am no fan of Elon for any number of reasons. And I always remind people that he is also a government contractor, which
his primary, really, that's like one of his primary revenue generators has always been. He's a government contractor.
So, when the Defense Department is buying Starlink systems or any number of things that he is providing, this is also a business play for him. This is like the ultimate lobbying success, right? Like how psyched would Raytheon be if their CEO could be chilling with Trump at the Army-Navy game, right? But I do think,
or even more than that, Paul, like yesterday, Trump went to the SpaceX launch. Oh, yeah. So it's like if Raytheon had the president of the United States show up for a fucking product launch.
Yep. I mean, we're a long way from My Pillow now, right? And I think,
yes.
But I do think there's another piece of this that's part of what's happening in the culture. People are often calibrating and picking winners, and they want to be on the winning side. And Musk is a lot of things. He's not dumb, and he had a lot of access to information. And whether he influenced it on a high level or a low level, like many people, he predicted Trump would win, and he was betting on it. And I was, I was very critical of the Kamala Harris pick, most of all because I didn't think she could win. And it was also in part a recognition of this environment, of the Democratic brand, of the racism, of the misogyny, of all of it. But most importantly, I didn't think she could win. And I felt like the Democrats who at one point tried to put up Bernie Sanders, I thought Bernie Sanders would have lost. And I did advocate for Joe Biden because I thought he could win as an independent and as someone who understood, the fabric of this country, like what can win. And I think a lot of what Elon and now so many other people are doing is they want to be with the winner. We're going to maybe talk about UFC, but John Jones is maybe the best light heavyweight on the planet in mixed martial arts. After he won that fight on Saturday night, the fight that a lot of people didn't see because they were watching the Mike Tyson shenanigans. But on Saturday night, there was a massive UFC fight at Madison Square Garden. And who was there? Speaker Johnson, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, RFK Jr. And then people started coming over to kiss the ring. Guess who's first in line? Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, who's hoping he gets a pardon and gets off the hook. And then at the end of the fight, John Jones does the dance, right? He does this stupid Trump dance. And then maybe most disturbingly to me as an American, he walked over and bowed to Trump and presented him the belt.
Yes.
Which is something you only see in Russia. It's something you see in North Korea.
So true.
After they win medals. It's not something you see in America. Right? Can you imagine if Colin Kaepernick won the Super Bowl and bowed down and presented it to Joe Biden? Right? I mean, it's just not an American thing to do, to be so subservient to any politician. But I think it underscores the danger. It underscores how he's manipulated the culture. It underscores how he's normalizing things. And I keep saying it. None of this is normal. and your concerns about a dictatorship, your concerns about authoritarianism, your concerns about the removal of rights for so many people is very real. And we should all be vigilant and serious about that and recognize that, look, I see MAGA hats in Manhattan now. You didn't see them. I live a couple blocks from Ground Zero, which is a very interesting place to live, but you didn't see a lot of MAGA hats. The next morning I went out for a run. I saw a couple and I was like, all right, like they're feeling bold. They feel okay. They feel like it's normalized. And I think that's an important way to look at this rather than dismiss someone like Elon Musk. I mean, he's now arguably the second most powerful person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So all the bets he made paid off, right? If you're talking about just the objective, all the Twitter investments, all the other bullshit, he's sitting there next to the commander-in-chief every fucking day. And that is something that you have to rip apart and analyze, but on some levels, like respect, the old Sun Tzu, like respect the enemy, right? Turn it around, look at it from the other side. And, there's no Democratic comp to that, but that's what he did. He made a power play and he won. And now it's up to figure out how do you oppose that? How do you slow it down? How do you resist it? How do you provide alternatives? And that's the hard part, I think, especially for Democrats that are kind of shattered right now.
All right. This has been great. I've really enjoyed having you on here, and we're going to do that again. I promised you that we would leave time to talk about baseball, and you have perfectly segued into it by talking about, I would say, sort of authoritarian forces in the world. And I know you're a Yankees fan, and so I will allow you to just tee off however you like.
Don't hate on the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees are such an amazing history lesson. Do you know what jersey I wear when we go to the Yankee games with my boys, Jason?
Let me guess. I'm gonna say maybe Mantle.
No. Although my son wears Mickey Mantle's number because his grandfather, my father, talked to him about Mickey Mantle and the story of Mickey Mantle. I wear Yogi Berra.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Number 8. Okay. Who was there on D-Day, was a World War II veteran like so many others, and arguably one of the greatest Yankees of all time. Definitely underappreciated for his MVPs and his titles.
From St. Louis, Missouri.
From St. Louis, Missouri, and an incredibly gritty, underappreciated guy. There's a whole amazing story. I recommend everybody watch the Yogi Berra documentary. But look, you can't hate this Yankees team. Like, there's some Yankees teams I think you can hate, but I think there are a lot of guys on this team like Anthony Rizzo, Aaron Judge. I mean, I guess some people hate Aaron Judge, but I'm happy that my kids are growing up in a time where they have Aaron Judge as a leader, a role model to look up to, and Juan Soto and a lot of other guys, and Jalen Brunson from the Knicks. I mean, we've got some people that are good people and that are good role models. And that's why I don't think you can hate on the Yankees like you used to. And the Dodgers are formidable, man. We're going to find out if by the time this ends, if Juan Soto signs, but we need Juan Soto. And Juan Soto will make it competitive. And I think we should all be excited about Ohtani versus Judge on and off potentially for the next 10 years, except for you guys in St. Louis. But the rest of the
I'm in Kansas City, remember.
This could be like, Bird versus Magic for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as you know, I'm in Kansas City. I just claim all of Missouri.
Yes.
But what I will say is that I actually, the World Series for me as a Royals fan and therefore as a default hater of the Yankees, like everybody else in the American League, it ended perfectly for me, because now I would prefer the Royals to beat the Yankees and that we would have gone on to the World Series if we had won the CS. But if the Yankees are going to get to the World Series, what I want to have happen is I want Juan Soto to have an incredible World Series and then the Yankees to lose so that the Steinbrenner, family or whoever's running the ship over there now have to pay all the money they possibly can to keep him, because they cannot fail. They cannot lose him to the Mets, because it is a New York battle ultimately.
Yeah.
He's not going to the Red Sox. And they can't lose him to the Mets. That's humiliating, which means they're going to have to break the bank. So it was a perfect scenario for me. Now, what I will also say about being a Yankees fan is I do hate the Yankees. It is contractually and morally an obligation of being a mid-market team fan. However, I have no problem with Yankees fans, because if I were raising children, if I had grown up in New York, and by the way, my uncle literally wrote the song New York, New York. Like I am a person who has every excuse in the world to just say, you know what, I'm a Yankees fan. It's an easier life. Okay. I have that excuse. I grew up reading every Mickey Mantle biography and autobiography. Yeah. I wore number 7 for a season as a kid because of it. All those things. But if my kids were growing up in New York and they wanted to be Yankees fans growing up in New York, I would allow that. Certainly, it's an easier life. My problem is when I meet people who live in Olathe, Kansas, or Lee Summit, Missouri, and they're like, "I'm a Yankee fan," because
you're okay with my kid being a Chiefs fan, right? You actually have this working to your advantage because the Chiefs are like the 49ers of this generation, or the Cowboys, or the Steelers, right? And I root for the Chiefs. I root for the Chiefs. I was rooting for the Bills this weekend because I think that they're due. But I think let me suggest this to you. I'm an independent. This is a time of post-partisanship, right? and I think our kids are lucky to be able to, one of my favorite kids' favorite players is Bobby Witt Jr.
Hey,
we like the Royals.
Really should
respected the Royals. I saw the Royals play a couple times. Love your team, and I don't hate on them. And I think here's what I'm proposing: stop the hate. Right? Stop the hate.
No, I agree in every way except with the Yankees. It's part of my personality.
There's a real controversy in New York about whether younger kids are allowed to root for the Mets and the Yankees. And I think they are, because I don't want my kids to hate on anybody. And if the Yankees are playing great, if go to a Mets game, it's a great experience. I grew up in that time when you had to hate the Mets. I'm past that shit. We got bigger fish to fry. We got a fascist as president, and there's war around the world. Let's just agree that baseball is awesome, and the rule changes are great. Baseball is back, especially if you have a young kid. It's not going to be a 4-hour game. You're in, you're out. The pitch clock is great. The bigger bases is great. Baseball is back, and it's fun, right? And that's what I care about most of all, because we need a little more of the purity of baseball back in America. And Trump hasn't shit on baseball yet. So, we still got that, right? Stay away. It's probably too boring for him or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I don't think his attention span can handle it, even with the rule changes.
Yeah.
I agree with you about everything you said. My family will continue to hate the Yankees because
but the next generation won't. I wonder if this is really true, because they're the kids nowadays can, fantasy football team, fantasy baseball team, they can pick who they. I love Ohtani. I think Ohtani is awesome for the game, awesome for the world, because I remember the first time I took my kids to see Ohtani. He was playing the Mets. He walked out and he tipped his cap.
Oh, Ohtani is incredible.
And I was like, you know what, kids? That's who you want. That's a role model. And I think we got to celebrate those role models wherever they are, especially in times like this. Celebrate the leaders, celebrate the positive examples, the people with integrity, and the people who are just nice, right?
Totally agree. My children are allowed to like individual Yankees and cheer for them as players, so long as their team loses.
You're like a fascist in your house, and the more
100%. Let me tell you a story.
The more they're going to fight. There's going to be a resistance in the Kander household to fight back against the authoritarian that's mandating they must be Chiefs against City Royals fans.
Let me tell you a story. During in the World Series, when we were watching and we were cheering for the Dodgers, not solely because we feel a moral obligation to be against the Yankees, but because, of what you said, Ohtani's a great story and it's fun. And we're watching, my daughter is 4, and she detected, as young kids sometimes do, that she could get a rise out of my son and I by being like, I like the Yankees. And without hesitation, my son and I turned to her and we said, Bella, I heard the Yankees don't like unicorns. So I'm saying you're not going to get across.
You know who my 5-year-old's favorite basketball team is?
Who?
The Boston Celtics.
That's pretty rough for you.
It's hard. But you know what? I respect it. And he likes Jason Tatum. And they won during the pandemic when all we had was sports. And he liked it. And, Jason Tatum is not the worst guy in the world.
He's a great guy, son of St. Louis, Missouri.
I love Al Horford. I can like, guys who are on a team without rooting for the team when they're playing my guys.
I hear you. I'm a rare Kansas City fan who likes the Cardinals too.
You hate the New York Liberty, Jason?
No, Liberty are fun. I like them.
Right?
Like them. Yeah. No. It's very specific to you got to understand. I was raised on the late 70s rivalry. George Brett is like my favorite player of all time.
I was raised in the 80s when the Yankees didn't win anything.
Yeah, right? No, I was born in 81. I was raised on the lore of the 70s stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to age myself extra here.
It is a good time to be reminded about the purity of baseball that you celebrate so much.
Agreed.
And I do think, it's a good time to remember. I think everybody should have mandatory public service. I also think everybody should have mandatory youth coaching. And mandatory restaurant work would be good too.
Umpiring would be good too.
Umpiring would be great. But if you really want to serve your community, or you want like a reality check, whether you have kids or not, like go coach, go umpire, go be a part of it. Because especially now, this is maybe to bring it all back around. People really need coaches right now. And these kids need positive role models because they're going to turn on the TV every day and see this fucking disgrace of a human being behave terribly every day. And they need to come back to Little League or to youth basketball or to jiu-jitsu or wherever else and have positive role models, and especially positive male role models and positive white male role models, right? Like they need someone they can look up to that's not a piece of crap like this guy. And I'm going to celebrate those and elevate those and recommend that the Yankees draft your kid.
Right. Well, okay. That is the one thing that would swing my allegiance. So,
that's going to be a mother for you, right?
Yeah. No. I'll be good. I'll be wearing pinstripes.
I mean, a kid named True playing for the Yankees. It's like, come on.
Whose great uncle wrote the song? Yeah. No, that would change everything.
Like the Anthony Rizzo story, right? Where you see the pictures of Rizzo when he was at the parade. When Anthony Rizzo is living the dream of every New York kid. He grew up in New York. He's playing shortstop for the Yankees. Right?
You're talking about Volpe, but yeah.
Sorry, Volpe. I said Volpe.
Yeah, I knew you knew what you meant.
I said Rizzo earlier. I didn't
want to leave you with that because I knew that you knew what you meant.
Volpe.
Okay.
Volpe.
All right.
Volpe.
I'm gonna leave. Now it has to end. This has been really fun. We're doing this again. Thank you very much. Before we go, tell people where they can find you because they're gonna want more.
Please check out Independent Americans. It's on every platform. Subscribe, share. I've got a great conversation this week with Barbara Starr, who covered the Pentagon for CNN for over 20 years. She's a legend and a role model, and she breaks apart what's really happening inside the Pentagon. And she talks about what happened in 2019 when the Trump administration tried to get her emails and her phone records to intimidate her and what could be to come for many folks in journalism. And check out independentveteransofamerica.org. If you are an independent veteran, especially, we are recruiting. We're going to run candidates next year for mayor, for local school board, for everything. We had 11 candidates run this time. 4 of them won, and they're inspiring. And if you're not an independent, I would argue that you should declare your independence and free yourself, emancipate yourself from the partisan grips. But if not, it's something I hope everybody can support. And Jason, I'm grateful to you, man. You have been a great role model and a great friend. And I'm grateful for all that you do, and to Jeremy and your whole team for having me. Thanks, guys. It's been a real pleasure. Go Yanks.
Right back at you on everything but the last part. Thank you very much. And everybody, please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.